John White set sail to Roanoke to deliver the much-needed supplies. And to his surprise, no one was there to receive him. An entire colony of settlers have just vanished. Welcome to the Paranormal Post. I'm Clayton Morris. If you love true stories of the unexplained, then go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps our channel. And go ahead and subscribe as well. Oh, and there's one more thing that you can do. That's to turn on that little bell notification so you'll receive a notification whenever we publish a new video. Well, since the dawn of time, the human race has suffered many untimely losses in wars or natural disasters or even murder. But sometimes we find great solace in knowing how our loved ones went. Today we'll talk about the lost colony of Roanoke, one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history, where the entire populated island was wiped out without a trace. On May 8th, 1587, approximately 115 to 120 settlers left England and relocated to Roanoke Island on the coast of the state known as North Carolina. They arrived in July the same year. The settlers chose John White to be the governor of the new 1587 Roanoke settlement. He was an explorer and an artist. There was resistance from the area's Native Americans in the first month after the colony moved in, and they launched a few small attacks. And the colonists apparently wanted John White to go back to England to retrieve more supplies for them as food, tools, and more people. So on August 25th, 1587, John White set sail to go back to England. He arrived in September. He left behind 150 colonists, 87 men, 17 women, 11 children, including his very own daughter. Eleanor White Dare, who had just given birth to their daughter called Virginia Dare. Virginia Dare was recorded to be the first baby born in North America to English parents. But sadly, John White's timing couldn't have been any worse, as England was on the verge of going to war with Spain, which had a particularly strong armada. Because of that, he was unable to return to Roanoke for some time. He was needed on the battlefront. It was not until August of 1590, 3 years later, did White finally return to the island. And to his surprise, he found that the entire colony vanished without a trace. The only crew left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a fence post and the word CRO carved into a tree. John White then reported trying twice to sail south 50 miles to the nearby Croatoan Island, which is known today by the name of Hatteras Island. Side note, my great-great-grandfather helmed the lighthouse at Hatteras Island. Little side note for you. However, according to White, both trips were foiled by storms, and he was forced to head back both times because the boat White was using was privately owned, and he was unable to try looking a third time for fear of damaging the craft and having to pay up out of his own pocket. John White then returned to Europe without his family, and he moved to Ireland, where he passed away in 1593. He died never knowing what happened to his family, his newborn daughter, nor the entire colony of Roanoke. And to this day, no one knows for certain the fate of the lost city of Roanoke. And even more disturbing, even after more than 150 people disappearing, no bodies or signs of a mass grave have ever been found. Historians have theorized on the lost colony in the hundreds of years that have passed, and plenty of people online have suggested the involvement of supernatural causes, but no one has ever been able to give conclusive evidence. Let's go through some of the theories right now. Theory number one. Some people suggest that the settlers were murdered by a set of Native American tribes. In fact, a previous attempt was made by England to colonize Roanoke Island years before, between 1585 and 1586. That group of settlers soon returned to England after some attacks by Native Americans they encountered, as well as the shortage of food and supplies. The governor of the first Roanoke Island colony, Ralph Lane, was known for being aggressive and possessive with the Native Americans. Ralph would actually go and kill the king of the local tribe in an attempt to prevent the natives from rising up against the colonists in the future. This prompted Sir Francis Drake, a British admiral, to come to rescue the colonists and bring them back to England. And as you see, the English would send another colony about a year later, only to vanish altogether. Though, as I already mentioned, no mass graves or any other large number of bodies has ever been found that might suggest the idea that 150 plus people in that colony had been murdered by Native Americans. Theory number two. The second theory suggests that the English settlers joined a nearby Native American tribe and assimilated themselves. One possible Native American ambassador was a man named Montejo, who traveled to England in 1584, but also made a second year-long trip between two Roanoke expeditions. In fact, the man reportedly sailed back to Roanoke with John White and the new colonists in 1587, spending months together on the journey across the Atlantic Ocean. Furthermore, after Montejo was baptized upon his return to Roanoke, John White declared Montejo to be the chief of the Roanoke and Croatoan tribes, whom the English called the Croatan. However, Montejo was only from the Croatan tribe, not from the Roanoke tribe. Subsequently, he could not control the Roanoke tribe himself, so he ended up going back to the Croatoan island with his people, possibly returning at some point to Roanoke to take the colonists with him to the Croatoan island, where they might have assimilated. In 1888, 54 Croatan Native Americans petitioned Congress for aid, describing themselves as a remnant of White's lost colony. A few months later, the directors of the Ethnological Bureau responded, writing, quote, "It was thought that the traces of the white blood could be discovered among the Indians, some among them having gray eyes. It's probably that the greater number of colonists were killed, but it was quite in keeping with Indian usages that a greater or less number, especially women and children, should have been made captive and subsequently incorporated into the tribe," end quote. Flash forward to 2015. Archaeologists found a series of objects of European origin on Hatteras Island, where the Croatoan tribe resided. This included broken bowls from England, the hilt of an iron rapier sword, and a writing tablet made of slate that may have still had the letter M printed on it, and egglets. The sword is a type used in England in the 15th century, and the hilt of it would have belonged to an Englishman of high standing. The writing tablet would have been used by educated upper-class Europeans. Aglets, however, are small copper tubes used before the early 17th century to store wool fibers. Therefore, finding these seem to point to the presence of colonists approximately the same time and class as the people of Roanoke. However, most of the European finds on Hatteras Island were among other objects that date to the 17th century, about 100 years after the disappearance of the Roanoke Island colony. Lastly, this theory could explain the carving, Croatoan, that was on the fence that the settlers left behind, perhaps as a clue to where they'd went. Theory number 3. The third theory is that the lost colonists didn't move to Croatoan, but instead they moved inland to the middle of the states. Now, if you remember, John White, the governor of Roanoke, was also an artist. He was also part of the original failed Roanoke expedition between 1585 and 1593. And he created a detailed watercolor map titled La Virginia Pars. The map showed the North Carolina coast, and it includes both Roanoke and Croatoan islands, which are colored red. The cartography of the map is thought to be extremely accurate, and it's described by museum experts as the most careful, detailed piece of cartography for any part of North America to be made in the 16th century. Pretty remarkable. And when compared to modern satellite imagery of the same area, the only differences in the map are the naturally changing shapes of the coastline. That's amazing. This fact, despite being impressive, might be nothing more than a map, but upon closer inspection, this map was revealed to perhaps hide the secrets that seem straight out of the movie National Treasure. Because in 2012, a nonprofit organization called the First Colony Foundation requested that the National Museum would re-examine 2 small patches on the map. Using patches to cover mistakes or damage was a common technique in the 17th century map-making process, because maps took so much time and work to create, and starting over was not a viable option. Using X-ray techniques, infrared light, and other imaging processes, the British Museum was able to determine that the small patch was covering a 4-pointed star outlined in blue and filled in with red. And according to the British Museum's report, quote, "While the detailed interpretation of this symbol is beyond the scope of this study and is best left to experts in the field, it seems certain to represent a fort or fortification." So that means that the star may show the location of a fort inland from Roanoke Island, on the western side of Albemarle Sound, where the colonists could have resettled. And to add more mystery, when examined closely, it was discovered that there are actually light markings of the star on the top patch as well. The British Museum's report posits that the markings faded over time, but it also proposes one other possibility. If the romantic explanation is that these lines could reflect the use of an invisible ink, an ink that would only be revealed when treated some way, usually applying heat. So as demonstrated in the film National Treasure, these invisible markings could be accomplished by using milk or lemon juice. I did that as a kid, using lemon juice with secret writing. So if this fort was indeed intended to be hidden, then why? Some speculate that John White could have wanted to hide the colony's location from the English court, which may have contained spies. Whatever the marks indicate, they believe this evidence supports the idea that settlers could have left Roanoke Island for this inland location. And actually, John White himself reportedly made an oblique reference to a location 50 miles inland from Roanoke Island in his account of what happened when he returned. Excavations on this site have turned up evidence of Europeans, including Surrey, Hampshire border ware, which is a type of ceramics that was discontinued soon after Jamestown in 1624. And again, aglets, which I mentioned earlier, were used before the early 17th century to store wool fibers. This is the best indication of tying the location to the Roanoke colonists, but we can't nail down the exact time frame on these items. Because even if it's eventually confirmed that the colonists moved inland or to the Croatoan Island, many possible unanswerable questions remain, like why did they leave Roanoke Island to begin with? And what happened then afterwards? There's no conclusive existence of any of the 150 plus colonists after August 25th, 1587. These questions have led some to believe it may have been caused by a supernatural event. Theory number 4. The colonists' disappearance might have been an instance of mass abduction by aliens. Some believe that aliens would explain why the colonists' bodies were never discovered, and if Croatoan was in fact a clue to where they were going, then why would the colonists not offer any other substantial clues, such as a note or a map? Maybe it's because they left the island in haste and not on their own volition. One more thing to point out is, what if the hidden symbol on the map is not in fact a fort, but rather a craft to simulate the landing spot? Obviously, if this was true, it would be absolutely something that would be hidden. Theory number 5. But weirdly enough, theory number 4 is not the craziest theory, because theory number 5 suggests that the lost colony of Roanoke disappeared due to a zombie plague. Yes, that's right. A researcher by the name of Andre Freeman from the Zombie Research Society believes that zombies would explain the swift disappearance. He said, quote, "A sudden undead plague sweeping through the unprepared colony would quickly become a horrific violent feast, leaving not a single man, woman, or child alive." Roanoke Island was, after all, an island, so it would be conceivable that the infection would be confined to the shorelines. Harvard archaeologist Lawrence Steger claims he actually discovered evidence that would suggest mass cannibalism on Roanoke Island. Notably, Roanoke was experiencing the most extreme drought in the area in 800 years. So some would say this evidence points to the fact that colonists turned to cannibalism rather than zombies. At the end of the day, and after over 130 years, the mystery of the Roanoke Island and its English colony continues to baffle, raising many unanswerable questions, like did they just decide to relocate as a colony in the absence of their governor? Did they join another tribe and live far away as an integral part of the Native Americans? Were they killed due to tensions with the locals? Or did they vanish and were used by aliens to further study the human race? I'll let you decide. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And please share this video with anybody else who loves the paranormal. We'll see you next time, everyone.